Hi, everyone. I want to talk a little bit about my week and kind of some of the things that happened. It was a rather busy week. I had met with a reporter to talk about my view on homelessness and the displacement situation. Hi. And that went really well. And you know, I'd had my infusion, I think that was last week. But Thursday, Shelly had called, and I'd already handed out supplies, so I was kind of low on supplies, but she had called and let me know that there was a man that was supposed to be getting into care that had been released from the VA. And the way it was said was that he had gone in for care. He was really sick. He's a paraplegic with a colostomy bag, and the man was really ill. And the way it was put out to me and others was that the hospital had been extremely uncaring and everyone was throwing this man away. And I was appalled. I was really upset. I was appalled. And when Shelly called to let me know that he had been released, I was like, let's grab some supplies and go. So we went. She came and picked me up, and we went down there. And when we got to the VA and parked, and we were walking up, we saw a man that looked very similar to the man we had seen on the post. And we asked him if his name was Mike, and it wasn't. But he was a neighbor of Mike's. He was a street sleeper. And several things I noticed as we approached the man was that there were 3 to 4 doctors standing around him, making sure that one of them said, you're lucid. So they're making sure he's okay. We had gone over to talk and ask him about Mike and sat down. And as we sat down, another doctor comes out and brings soda and juice and a sandwich for the man. And, is like, here you go. You need to get some fluids in you. Please drink this, even if you got to mix it, Giving this guy, and this is outside the hospital. This is on, like, in the waiting, not like the concrete they have outside, and so they were seriously caring. So I had some questions, and as we began to talk to this man, it became clear what was going on. And this is a huge lesson that I learned, that I'm sharing, is that when we started talking to the guy, he's like, I'll take you to Mike. And during the conversation, he lifted up his pant leg, and there were sores just lining his legs, oozing. His hands had scabs. And he was telling us about how he didn't like coming there because he didn't like getting Narcan. Narcan it's to reverse opiate overdose. So when he made that statement, I knew that drugs were going to play a factor here. And then he began to speak about how it made him feel bad when in the hospital they would come and treat him with biohazard suits. At this point, I realized that the man had MRSA. And Shelly was pushing his wheelchair at this point, and I'm immunosuppressed, and I know that it takes exchange of bodily fluid, but this stuff is highly contagious. And as he's talking, he's picking scabs off of his hands and throwing them. And luckily, I had left Rowan at the apartment with Gypsy while I went. And as he was talking about his situation, and this man's in a wheelchair and with, a serious illness, several serious illnesses. And we begin to go down, he starts to talk about the fact that he would not want treatment. It's too hard to go through the treatment when he's got going on what he's got going on. The road to health would have been, or is, so long that maybe it's hard to get out of. I'm not sure. The man had an income. He was getting a VA payment. He said it was $1,700 a month. But he would rather spend those things on feeling better, as he put it, or drugs. And he started to talk about Mike and how Mike's situation was much worse. And that Mike used his money with his next door neighbor there was some drama situation where one was taking advantage, Charlie was taking advantage of Mike for his money to get them both high or something. I don't know. In the end, it became ultra clear to me that medical is so important. Healthcare is so important. And not just for the individual. When I was homeless, I wasn't around the addict camps. I know very little of what happens to them outside of spiraling downwards or behavioral issues, or I knew about diseases that they could pass back and forth. But one thing I never considered, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, is that we literally have people melting in our streets with communicable illnesses that can be transferred to our animals and ourselves, regardless of whether we partake in that environment or not. And at that point, it ceases to be about a personal responsibility or lifting oneself up or any of those things. At the time that we were there were people who were disintegrating. Their skin is disintegrating. It is erupting into sores. And they are tearing the scabs off and injecting the drugs into the sores. And it became very clear to me that we are missing a huge factor in all of this. Healthcare, on a personal level, keeps our communities, our cities, and our world safe. And if we deny healthcare, or we skip on healthcare, or we continue to deny people habitat and put people who are literally melting from disease on our street, this is a much bigger than a personal problem. This is going into our habitat. I'm immunosuppressed because I take a medication for my arthritis. And it frightened me. I have to say, it frightened me. I hand out supplies on a regular basis. And I've never really considered it until spending time talking to someone who was literally melting in their wheelchair and told me that this is what they are going to do. And fine, okay, but at some point where the medical system has to step in, and we cannot have MRSA, active MRSA on our streets. You know, it made me, in another way, so grateful to myself for not placing myself in a shelter or a place that would have high concentrations of serious communicable illnesses. I'm floored and I'm saddened, and I was unaware. I was unaware of just how horrific it's getting. And I guess a question that I'm going to be searching for and really thinking about is, do we consider it a personal choice to turn down treatment when the option is a biological hazard? And when it becomes a biological hazard, you know, it's a whole new aspect to this. And so I'm making this post just to, I guess, make people aware of what I wasn't aware of, that this was a veteran. This was, people were screaming, how can we leave these people like this? How can we do this? I think the issue is that we leave options open for people who can't make that choice anymore. And do you have the freedom to poison a society? And I'm not talking poison by actions or behavior. I'm talking communicable illness to continue to spread. At what point do we as a society say that that's not an option anymore? That the other beings, our environment, our animals, ourselves, you know, there's just a lot of questions that need to be answered. But I am telling you right now that there are people who have incomes who cannot make the choice, who won't, or are unable, who are literally disintegrating on the street. Their bodies are disintegrating into communicable illness, and I don't know what to do about it. I'm not comfortable going into those communities without protective gear. And I don't know, and it hits me, when the man said, how bad it made him feel when the people at the hospital would come at him in biohazard suits. I can imagine, to feel like a pariah. No one wants that. But also no one wants someone to feel like they matter so little that we're going to pass them by while they turn into human soup. So I guess that's where I'm at. And those are the kind of questions that I'm trying to answer. And now I've been made aware of a whole new aspect I hadn't thought of. So that's where that was at. That was kind of what colored my week. Actually, I had a very busy week with medical. I had some really great news come out of medical. The cysts that I was having resolved, so that's wonderful. And I'm doing good. I just, I want to still focus on, we got to solve this crisis. And to solve anything means knowing deeper parts of it. But every time I go out, it all seems to stem upon healthcare. Healthy individuals create healthy communities. And we need that. We need individuals and families on up to be healthy. And that is a whole health approach, and that's food, shelter, habitation. Talking to you later. Bye.